So maybe also.
I have started it, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. So first of all, thank you, everyone. We are very excited to have this first of a kind meeting around the twin architecture, and we're very pleased to see you all coming in. I just want to framing a little bit what we are doing here. As most of you, I would assume, know, TWIN is the Trade Worldwide Information Network. That's the naming for this. And the technology that we are building is with the aim to become an open source public infrastructure for international trade. And the fact that we want to make sure this becomes an open source and public infrastructure, we've done a few things. I think most people might be aware in this call because we consider you all friends and close to what we're doing. But it is to ensure a good, proper governance around the code that we are developing. And one part of that is the governance structure itself with the Twin Foundation that will be hosted with World Economic Forum and that we expect to be launched officially with around May. In part, so that's the governance part of this. Today we won't talk about that. Today we want to talk about the architecture, the code, and most of you will probably have already received the white paper that was developed by the team. And for us, this is a roadmap for start to share, start to engage, and involve the architecture and the code as a collaboration and in the spirit of open source until we can move things onto a proper open source governance structure. So that's what we want to do. So today, it's very much inviting you all as people we know, friends of this, for this first session, getting your questions, your critical comments, your interest, and hopefully a little bit of your love as well as we move this forward. And we have put aside some time today where, from our side, Jose will go through the architecture and provide input and show you how it's worked. We're going to talk about how we do document management, which is of course important, and show you a practical use case. And then we will end with a Q&A that would allow you all to ask questions, good, bad, stupid, critical. So we can note all these down and use them to further improve as we go forward and give you a sense of the roadmap here. So I'm going to hand over to Jose, who is going to lead us through today. But thanks everybody for joining. Really excited about having you all here. Jose, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So today we have an agenda overall with 4 points plus the last point, which will be the debate and the questions. So we start with an introduction. Why Twin? Not from a business perspective, because all of you know the reasons from a business perspective, but also from a technical perspective. Then I will go through the architectural overview and the main landmarks of the architecture. Then my colleague Cornel will present a practical use case using an initial version of the Twin Sandbox, which is essentially a single node environment which a workbench UI that allows to become familiar with the capabilities. It's still in an earlier stage, but we can show you that we are actually working on real code and not just on a theoretical basis. Also, I will give some pieces about the roadmap and what we are doing, and we will plan what we are planning to do in the next 2 years. So let's start with the why Twin from a technology perspective. So I think there is a historical perspective here that we need to take into account. So the digitization of trade supply chains is not a new topic. So, and actually it all started with EDI. So where companies, they wanted to exchange documents in a peer-to-peer basis, and essentially for doing this, and it is EDIFAT is one of the standards. But if we check about what are, or we think about what are the traditional pillars of doing this, so essentially it means that you need a global approach. So standards and interoperability are fundamental if you want to do, in general, exchange of documents or exchange of data. You need data models, and the buy, ship, pay from UNCFAC is a classical data model, and you need data dictionaries. You need to know what are your data points, what are your data models, what are the real semantics, because you are modeling the real world to digitize it. You need data transmission formats, and in the times of EDI, it was field delimited tests, as you are seeing in the right top of the slide. But then it evolved into XML, and then standards business messaging formats like JS1 BMS, etc., etc. Then you need message interchange protocols with EDIFAT. So you have the protocol that says you need to start with this header, then here is the body, and here is the end of the message. So this is what you need, message interchange protocols as well. You need dedicated networks. So there can be networks that the different actors connect to, and they exchange the data in the edit times. You need identification standards. So you need to identify companies, you need to identify documents, you need to identify items. You need registries, of course. You need to know who are the actors, where are the locations. So you need some of them global registries. And of course, you need traceability standards. So how do you model the different steps that happen in a supply chain? So from commissioning an item to delivering the item, etc., etc. So, and this is what was the I would say the basics, and we will see in the next slides that the basics still remain, but in a different way. So it is not in the same way or using the same technologies as it was planned by Eddie, but using different ones, as we will see. But these pillars are key. So you need the global approach, you need the data models, you need the data transmission formats, the message interchange protocols, then you need a network, but in our case, in the modern times, it will be the internet. You need the identification standards, you need registries. We will talk about registries as well, and you need ways of modeling how traceability, because traceability is a key part in supply chains. And of course, this is what the EDI approach was set, but there was like a disruption. And if you think about 2000 is when the internet and the web came into play. And when there was not the widespread adoption of EDI-like technologies, then the internet appeared. And then people and companies realized, well, we have simpler and cheaper ways of communication. We have email, we have FTP, we have HTTP. We now have formats that can be interchanged over those media, particular PDF. If we need to exchange, I would say, an Excel sheet like data, we have CSV format. And even this evolved into web interfaces. So I can get access to information concerning my company or my supply chain just from the web, and later from a mobile device. It happened. And of course, we have web APIs. Even this can be offered to be consumed, I would say, by machines, not only by human through web interfaces, but also by machines through web APIs. And with this panorama, companies evolve into using this new media to interchange data, to interchange documents, because it was like easier than EDI. But also in the 2010s decade, there was a step ahead. It was like, okay, now we can deploy these applications very easily because the cloud services are commoditized. And then companies start realizing, okay, we can develop our own bespoke applications and solve our problems, but still the new issues appear. And this is what we are seeing in where we are now. So this is the historical context from EDI, what was the initial intention of doing digitization of supply chains environments using EDI, then the appearance of the internet and cloud platforms. And with those elements, we can say that there are like 3 different maturity levels. So there is a maturity level 1 where essentially the interaction between companies happens through informal exchange of PDFs, CSV files, email, etc., etc. And this is, of course, they are manual processes, time-consuming, error-prone. Then there is a level 1.5, which is when your company digitize and creates bespoke API integrations intra-company, maybe sometimes intercompany. But of course, the scope of this application sometimes is limited, and there are multiple assumptions there, so it can be inflexible. Sometimes organizations, when developing these bespoke applications, realize that it is not so cheap, that it can be expensive, especially if you are maintaining the application and evolving the applications to changing business needs. And then we can see what it has been like the maturity level 2, that these kind of platforms like TradeLens or the eFITO appear where you have a data hub and you have a software as a service platform that essentially allows to collaborate. So allows multiple partners in the supply chain to collaborate the same way that you are collaborating in Web 2.0 social platforms. Like, because in the end is generating some data, adding more data to the data originally generated and sharing, the data or documents among the different actors. But again, and the experience with these even data hubs or maturity level 2 platforms, of course, it's safe. It enables a certain degree of interoperability, especially, of course, if you just join the platform and you are part of the data hub. In that moment, you can talk to any of the other participants in that data hub. But of course, that was at some cost. And the cost, of course, is that you don't have data sovereignty. You just need to put your data in this data hub. And of course, there is a vendor lock-in because different platforms were developed. So each platform has its own APIs, has its own assumption. And of course, there is too much power for the actors that actually are developing the platform. And this is something was shown, for instance, in TradeLens, and so if you depend on a particular platform, you in the end have the problem of too much power for the actors that are running the platform. And we have seen this in social networks, where I would say walled gardens were created without, interoperability or without any possibility of talking each other. And what we are looking is to go into a next maturity level, so that we know and we acknowledge the fact that there are organizations still in level 1, others organizations in level 1.5, other organizations maybe in level 2 because they are already using these data hubs. But in general, there is the problem of data silos and limited interoperability, either in which level you are. Of course, in level 2, you are closer where you want to be, but we are not there. So what we want to be is to be in a maturity level 3, where no longer we are talking about data hubs, or we are no longer talking about platforms per se, where you join and you share your data there and others come to get that data, but we are talking about ecosystems. And And these ecosystems, they should be decentralized. That should be a self-sovereignty by definition. But of course, there are certain needs. What you need to really build a value chain ecosystem? Well, you need transparent rules. So you need the governance to participate. And you need to decide who are going to be your trust anchors. So the entities that I would say perform attestation, but you need to decide what is needed to participate. Do you need to have an attestation from the I would say ministry in your local country, or you need an attestation from life for an example? You need to decide what are the rules for participating in an ecosystem. Then of course you are going to need a software agent that allows you to participate. It's like using your browser. So you need a browser to go to get access to the internet, and you need a server, a web server, if you want to publish data or documents on the internet. So again, we are going to need this agent, which is going to be the twin node, to be able to participate and through a common protocol. You need, of course, the way to discover participants and which data, which documents they offer, and the software agent. You need to get to know what is the IP address of in the end of this software agent that is going to allow to get the data that others have. Because now we are talking about self-sovereignty. So the data remains in your node, and you can expose that data to other participants. Then, of course, you need the access rights and the policy. So which data is shared to whom and under which conditions. So you don't want to share all your data. You want just to share pieces of data to certain participants, and you need a way to declare it. You need a language to declare it. And then you need authentication, but you don't need like the central, I would say, through a very well-known identity provider. We want to have authentication that can work without any a priori knowledge, and that's where decentralized identity comes into play, where you don't need to have like a central identity provider. You can have you have decentralized identity as a way to overcome that. And of course, you need verifiable data, because data is no longer in a central place. It's no longer controlled by an authority that it is super trusted. Is controlled by each participant, and each participant may need to commit to that data. And there should be ways to, once I commit to that data, others can query the data and verify that I have not tampered the data, that the data is the same as when I declared that was the data. So we need to make data verifiable. And we want evolution, not revolution. So what we don't want is that if organizations are in maturity level 1.5, for instance, or in maturity level 2, how they can evolve into maturity level 3 without a full revolution. So evolving, and that means that you are going to need adapters for existing systems, as we will see. So we want to go to reach maturity level 3, and what we have in 2025. So we have the software infrastructure services. So organizations can deploy their own, I would say, computing infrastructure easily with technologies like Kubernetes. We have really scalable data stores. ShilaDB is one of our favorite ones when talking about this. We have decentralized storage, that it is IPFS. We have verifiable registries. We have the DLTs, and IOTA, of course, is our favorite one. And there is advance in decentralization and self-sovereignty in the industry. So Gaia X, IDSA, and also the work around verifiable credentials, EIDAS2. So they are advancing toward self-sovereignty and decentralization. But if we go back to the first slide, it happens that the original standards that were thought for EDI, then now they have evolved. Now they are more web-friendly, and we have the UNCFAC vocabulary that it is essentially an evolution of the by pay ship data model, now expressed in terms of the linked data and web-friendly mechanisms. We see the same with GS1, with the GS1 vocabulary. EPCIS, the traceability standard, has evolved into EPCIS 2.0, that it is now web-friendly with web APIs and linked data. So we have the classic supply chain standards also have evolved into, becoming ready for this evolution. And there is also interest by regulator in decentralized approaches. So you read the ESPR DPP specs, regulation in this case, or the UNCFAC UNTP. There is concern in regulators about saying, yes, we want to make this thing decentralized. We no longer want the data hub approach. So there is a good momentum with all this panorama of technologies to do something around and to build what to say is going to be the EDI of 2025, which is going to be different, but we will see that the pillars are just the same, but expressed in a different way. And of course, there is a weapon that we've been using for years in innovation, which is make it open source. Why? Because if you make this open source, then we will allow adoption, is more easy adoption. We will allow collaboration, so more people working on it, and meritocracy. So it will be adopted if engineers think it is good, but also if it is, being good for businesses, and in the end, the ones that have to deploy the final systems say, yes, this technology can solve these problems. But if we check about the pillars that we were mentioning initially, we say, yeah, they are the same pillars, but expressed in a different way. So we need global approach and interoperability. And now we have other standards that have evolved, We need data models, and we have linked data vocabularies now instead of the old data dictionaries, et cetera, that in the EDI times were being. Now they have evolved into being linked data vocabularies. We need data transmission formats, and now we have JSON LD that enables real semantic interoperability. We need message interchange protocols, of course, but in this case, we have data space connector protocols that can work on top of HTTP, REST, WebSocket. We need networks, but in this case, it's the internet, the network. We need identification standards. We have the classical ones, so the GS1 standards, for instance, still apply, but we have decentralized IDs as well in our arsenal, in our toolbox. We have registries, and of course, there can be the classical registries, but now we are going to need federated or fully decentralized registries, for instance, to discover who are the actors which I can interact with and what are the services they are offering. And then, of course, with self-onboarding, that's an important part, because now we are saying that we no longer want these data hubs. We want participants to self-register themselves. And we have, for traceability, as I said, we have EPCIS 2.0, which is the reference standard, and from there you can build extensions, et cetera, So the same pillars apply, but now with a different stack of technologies and supported by several initiatives and several technologies that are already available in 2025. So this is why we need twin, and we need the twin initiative, is because we are trying to make organization to reach this maturity level 3 in technical terms. And so essentially, for understanding the architecture of twin, which essentially resembles the architecture and some of the concepts around Gaia X, is we are talking about twin ecosystem, which essentially is a supply chain ecosystem that it is going to be composed of the governance, as I said, for instance, the governance for participation, but also infrastructure, software, hardware that you can use to participate. Then there is the participant. So participants are the actors. So these actors are going to be identified by the centralized identifier, and they can play different roles. They can be operators, providers, consumer. In general, they operate, provide, or consume services in general. And there is the trust anchors, so the parties that accredit who can participate, for instance. But it depends on each ecosystem. So each ecosystem decides who are their trust anchors. So it does not mean that you always need a trust anchor. Maybe some ecosystem says, okay, the trust anchor is this particular participant because this is what we trust. Or there can be ecosystems where you require a higher level of trust anchor. So maybe you require a trust anchor that it is going to be the government. So it depends. And of course, you need compliance credentials. So in order to participate, or your services to participate, you need to be compliant. Again, the definition of compliance depends on the rules you set in your ecosystem. So we are not saying that for being compliant, you need to be certified by the government. Maybe not. Maybe your ecosystem, you decide a different definition for compliance. And of course, you need a node. So you need the software agent that enables the participants to interact in the ecosystem. And the node, we are talking here about node in a wider sense than the DLT node. So actually, a twin node includes a DLT node, can also include an IPFS node for decentralized storage. And there is one, but the twin node has more functionalities than that. So it is supported as an infrastructure services by the DLT node, but it is more than a DLT node. And one specific landmark and key landmark in a twin node is the data space connector. Is like that component that is going to allow that my twin node is able to speak to other systems and to other twin nodes. And that is a key part. And that is the key part that, in the sense that if you implement the protocol of the data space connector, then you can talk to other twin nodes. And that's the key aspect. Or if your existing system implements an adapter towards a connector, then your system immediately can participate in an ecosystem. So you always need a data space connector. So, and this is the highest level overview of a twin, of what we want to build with twin. And essentially, there are nodes. So to participate in the ecosystem, you need a node, you need a data space connector, and on top of that, the node, you will find that there are native solutions, so solutions that have been built on top of your node. And I would say, starting in maturity level 3, you develop your solution on top of the node. But that could happen, but there could be cases where you already have a system and you want to make it that participating in the ecosystem. And this is when you develop an adapter. And that adapter to that system is capable of providing data to the twin node through the data space connector. And through the data space connector, that data can be shared or can be exchanged with other twin nodes. So this is the concept of an adapter. And there can be adapters specific for your specific system, or we plan as well to have adapters for I would say, well-known systems. So you can think about a Sikuda world, the single window system. We may have an adapter for Twin, and organizations that already have that kind of system can start participating in an ecosystem, and we can do adapter for SAP, for any other existing system. That is going to be a key thing in Twin. And of course, we are going to need as well a way of discovering, as I said before, discovering who are the participants. And discovering who are the participants is done through the catalog. So in the catalog is a registry of participants and the services they provide. That essentially allows to say, if I want to know who can provide this type of document and I need the document, I can go to the catalog and say, this document can be provided by this participant, and then here is the data space connector I can use to retrieve the document. So essentially, I go to there, I authenticate myself as a member, as a participant in the ecosystem, and I retrieve the document. So the catalog is the place where participants are registered and services are registered. And from that catalog can be retrieved the information that it is needed. Of course, how do you end up in the catalog depends on the rules of your ecosystem. So if your ecosystem says to be a participant, you just need a credential signed or imagine that in the worst case, you need just a self-signed credential. And this is and the rules of your ecosystem say yes, you are allowed to do so, you will be in the catalog. Of course, there can be ecosystems that do not allow you to do that, and then you will not be in the catalog in that case. So the catalog is the key thing, where there is the list of curated participants, there is the registry, of curated participants, curated services, so that you can do this data exchange. Of course, you could always just have your data in your own Twin node and not being registered in the catalog. Then in that case, you would be like in maturity level 2, in the sense that all your data is there and you cannot share your data with others, at least through the data space connector. You may do it in a data silo approach, but the idea is that you can be in maturity level 3. And for maturity level 3, you need the catalog and you need the connector. And ideally, of course, the adapters, because you are going to have existing systems. And here is an example of how this could work in a flow. So imagine that we have a system that it is capable of generating documents that are, for instance, export declarations. And the adapter, there is an adapter that automatically notifies the existence of the document to the connector. And then the connector fetch, well, this arrow, by the way, is it should be the other way. I know I'm seeing it. So the two arrows are changing in the so the interaction is between the connector, is from the connector to the adapter, and then the connector asks the adapter, and then the adapter provides the document. And once the document is provided, the document can be start tracked in the Twin node, and we will see that in the example that Cornel is going to show in a few minutes. And once the Twin node has started tracking the document, etc., can notarize the document, and then that document, it can be let known to other connectors, to other nodes. And essentially, the node does not necessarily need to keep the document, just need to keep track that the document is there and the document exists. When someone knows the document exists, another participant can request the document at a later point in time, and then the node can say, yes, here is the document, and you can check through this fingerprint or through this notarization that the document has not changed in the meantime. So as I said, in that interaction, further interaction, the node may just again call the adapter to say, please give me now the document because it is needed. So it depends on how do you set. There can be also situations where the node stores locally the document as well, but it is typically because the participant does not have those capabilities of storage and then uses the node directly for storing the data. But the flow, this is an example of a flow where a system has a new data, notifies the connector registers in the twin node, the twin node notarizes, etc., and then can propagate that event, so to say, to other connectors, etc., so that they become aware. So we can imagine this export declaration being propagated to the node of a destination country, so that they know in advance that the document exists, etc. Again, and sorry for these arrows are in the opposite direction. So this is the fetch is happening from the connector towards the adapter, and then the adapter provides the data, not the connector. Next, so essentially, if we have the services and frameworks that are provided by a twin node, essentially is needed like four different kind of services. So you need visibility services because you want to have auditable object representations of the items that are in your supply chain. You need document management because either in each ecosystem we can imagine there is going to be documents that need to be exchanged sometimes, documents that need to be verified sometimes. And you are going to need data exchange services. So the twin data space connector is the key point. Is you need to share data, and there should be a protocol. So remember that we need a protocol to exchange the data among the different nodes, and this is the data exchange services. So we need way to track objects. We need a way to manage documents. We need a way to exchange data about both. And then we need, as I said, federation services. That the main federation service is the catalog, because with the catalog you can discover other participants, you can discover their services, and you can start exchanging the data. And of course, you need a way of having trust. So the trust framework can be as simple as there is a single trust anchor, or there can be multiple trust anchors and different levels of trust. It depends on the rules of each ecosystem. And all of that is put in this picture, where you can see how that is structured. So there are visibility services, particularly auditable items and document management that we will show later in our small demo. Then you have the data space connector, which is quite important. And in the data space connector, of course, you need to check when someone is asking for certain data, you need to check what are the access and rights that apply. So because someone may be asking me some data, but it does not have the proper attributes and the proper permissions, it will not be able to get access to the data. And then, of course, you are going to need all the infrastructure. So in the infrastructure, there is DLT nodes, there are decentralized storage, data stores, key management systems, and the twin is being built with different connectors. So we are not just bound to a particular data store. We are not just bound to a particular TMS or decentralized storage or DLT. There are different connectors, and you can develop new connectors if it happens that you need other data stores, etc. So we are not bound to particular data store, but of course we provide connectors for popular data stores, for instance, MySQL. So there is one of the connectors we have, and for these DLTs we provide for sure IOTA connector, for decentralized storage, IPFS. So the popular ones are there. And then you need the enabling and federation services, where you need a way of onboarding participants, and this is what is done through TwinID. So the way you onboard the participants, and of course the catalog. And on top of that, the different solutions. And there can be native solutions, or there can be existing systems that through an adapter can talk to Twin. And of course, you may have the common platform services that typically it's needed. There can be also edge devices connectors, because sometimes the data is not captured directly, but it is captured through scanners, RFID readers, etc. So those connectors may allow to feed data into a Twin node as well. So the auditable item services, that will be better explained with a practical case. But essentially, the idea of the auditable item services is to be able to have a way of representing objects and the relationship between objects, creating a graph. And then over that graph of objects, you can string data as well, for instance, events, and associate item streams with those items. So imagine an item is a particular, I would say, palette, that it is in the supply chain, and imagine that the palette is going through multiple locations, and each location is generating an event. So those events will be in the auditable item string, and the palette itself, the properties of the palette, etc., will be captured through the auditable item graph, and the relationship between the palette and the possible I would say the child items that palette may have. So seeing this better, this is an example now. So, well, in this case, it's a consignment and a consignment item, but the idea is the same. There is a consignment item that it is a child of a consignment, and you can have properties on each of the objects. So, for instance, there is a destination country or the customs ID. So there can the weight, different properties, and you have relationships as well. So these relationships, they can have properties. So, for instance, when the item become part of the consignment, that is also a property of the relationships. And for the different items, as we will see later, you may have associated whatever blobs, any other what we call resource can be associated as well. And what we are creating is a graph. So that is what is called auditable item graph. It's a graph, but it is auditable at the same time, because every change that you make in the item is audited, and you can also keep record of those changes at the DLT level. So whenever someone shares the data, other actors may check for that the data has not been tampered with, the data has not been forged, as we will show in the example that Cornel is going to show in a few minutes. So we have the event management. Is as I said before, you can store events as an auditable item string, and then on top of that have the typical query interfaces that allows you to get access to those events. So, for instance, an event can be, as it is shown here, that an inspection has been done at a particular location. So that's an event. So the event is covering the what, the when, the where, who, and why dimensions of something that it is happening in the supply chain. And in Twin, we are using EPCIS and extensions over EPCIS for capturing all these events in supply chains. As I said, it might depend a lot in in the kind of supply chain you have. You may be interested in certain events and not in other events. And also in the domain you are in the supply chain. So it is in the transportation domain, there are certain events, and in the, I would say, in other domains, there are other events. Document management, that's something important because we understand the fact that in supply chains, at the moment, there is a lot of PDF-like document. So we have designed the system so that you can use modernized documents that can be represented as JSON LD with data integrity proofs, similar to verifiable credentials. That would be the ideal situation. Purely, I would say, machine-readable documents, but there is like this intermediate step where organizations are still using PDFs, and we are ready as well to use PDFs in our system. Of course, that implies challenges around that because you need data extraction, you need other capabilities, but the idea is the same: is that documents can be attested over the DLT capabilities that we will show later. And there can be certain documents that can even be transferred as the MLTR is recommended. So for instance, the bill of lading. So there are documents that it is just needed to notarize them in a single way, but there can be other documents that can even be an NFT in the ledger and be transferred among participants. And of course, something for you to take into account is that with the data space connector, the data space connector appears here because all the data, so there can be data that it is directly captured directly captured through applications and go directly to the auditable item graph or auditable item string. But there is other data that is going to come through other nodes. And this is why the data space connector has to interact with the auditable item services or has to interact with the event management here, the data space connector, or with the document management, because this is going to be one of the source of data is data that it is coming from other existing systems that have the data or from other nodes. And here is the document management. So the document management has different functionalities. And of course, this is just an introductory webinar. In further webinars, we will talk about our design around these components and specific APIs, because all of these components, of course, they expose APIs, web APIs. And here, well, you could see the information that can be captured about a document, the type of document, the content, format, timestamps, who is the issuer. So all the document metadata, but this is usually already specified in UNC-FAC vocabulary. You have multiple properties, and of course we use those vocabularies, but you can use other vocabularies if you wish. But in our projects, we use the UNC-FAC vocabulary. And finally, the data space connector. So the data space connector is a key thing. And you can see here how two data space connectors talk each other. So there is a data plane where in the IDSA architecture there is a control plane and a data plane. But essentially, if we focus in the data plane, there is a data exchange that can be done either in a pull basis or in a push basis. So essentially, one data space connector can push data to another data space connector that has already subscribed to that data. But there can be cases where one data space connector just pull the data from another data space connector. So this is I would say, the essentials. But the important thing is that there are policies. So you need policies to check whether if that data space connector can get access to the data on behalf of a participant that another data space connector has access to. And this is through the policy management and execution component. And why and what is being used behind this is there is ODRL. ODRL is a W3C standard that allows you to set those policies. So we will talk about that in future webinars. But essentially, it allows one participant to say, I agree to share this piece of data with these other participants. And you can specify the other participant by identity of the participant or by certain attributes that that participant may have. So for instance, you can say, if it is a customs or a border agency, it can get access to this, I don't know, certificate of origin that it is in my node, you know? So, but this is the overview, you know, the idea and the main landmarks of the architecture we would like you today to understand and later ask questions. So, as I was talking for nearly 1 hour, I think now it's time to allow other people to talk. And we are starting with a practical case that my colleague Cornel is going to show. So just for you to introduce. So the development of Twin is ongoing, and the code, the majority of the code at the moment is public in GitHub, in the Twin Foundation GitHub. And there is a workbench which essentially is part of a single node sandbox environment. And the single node sandbox environment is what Cornel is going to show. So, and this workbench is just for people to technical people to try out the different functionalities around Twin Node. The same things that Cornel is going to do now can be done through web APIs, so using Postman, etc., etc. But the thing that we would like you to understand is that we are working on the development of Twin, and of course, this workbench and this sandbox environment will be growing with the different, you know, once we continue with the development and creating additional components, you will see more and more. So, for instance, in the roadmap, you will see that the federated catalog and other, I would say, decentralized components are still in initial early stages of development. So, Cornel, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Let me share the screen. Okay. Now let me know if everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, works perfectly.
Cool. Okay, so this will be a short presentation, like demo about the consignment and document attestation flow, which Jose mentioned earlier. So we're just gonna jump straight into it. And the first step would be to go to our auditable item graph and create our consignment, which will be a vertex on the graph. And let me just grab my data for the consignment. So this will go in here. As you can see, it's of type consignment. We're going to go to the next section. We're going to give it an alias so we can easily recognize it. Okay. We're not going to have any resources at this point or any edges. We will create later the edge that will tie the consignment to our phytosanitary document. Okay, so we have created our consignment. We can go inside and view it. So this is the data that we just created the consignment with. We can see here the aliases and any resources we might have. These are all updatable, so we can update them. We can go and view this, and actually we have an immutable proof that we can go and see on the IOTA network representing our consignment. So let's take a look at that. This is our proof, and we can go on the IOTA network and see that we can see it here as well. So going back to my workbench, now the next step would be to actually upload our document and attest it. So this is going to be a phytosanitary certificate. I'm going to upload. This is just a dummy certificate. Okay, we are going to upload this. So now we have our phytosanitary certificate. We can go and view it. This is our document. And after that, we are going to go and actually attest the phytosanitary certificate that we created. And basically attesting a document is going to go and create an NFT on the IOTA network. So that means that this document can be owned and transferred. Okay, so that NFT was minted. We can see it here. We can go and view it. And we can also go to the IOTA network and see our NFT. So this is our NFT. And if I just take this WJT proof and actually go to the JWT and decode this, we can see that we have our blob file here. And it's ECB5. And if I go to my blobs, this is actually our ID of the file we just uploaded and attested. I just need to grab my ID because we are going to use this in a few minutes. And the next step will be to go back to our graphs and create another vertex which will represent this phytosanitary document, so that after that we can connect it through an edge to our consignment. So I'm actually going to go here, and of course we're going to have some data for our phytosanitary certificate. This would be of type digital document. Also, I will add an alias so we can easily identify it. And as the resource here, I'm going to paste in the ID that I just copied from our attestation that created an NFT. I'm going to go next. We're not going to have any other edges. We could, if we have other documents related to this phytosanitary certificate. I'm going to say finish. Now we can see we have our consignment and digital documents. So we can actually go inside here and inspect this as well. We can, of course, see the data that we uploaded. We can see our alias that we give it, also the resource, which is the attestation NFT ID. Of course, we have also immutable proof for this one as well. So we can go, it's not finished yet, but it's going to take a few seconds until, yeah, so it's verified yet. And we can see this on the blockchain as well, in the Explorer. And the last step would be now to connect the two together. So we would go in our consignment. We would add an edge. We use the edge to tie our phytosanitary document to our consignment, and we're going to give it a relationship of has document. We're going to add the relationship and add the edge. So now we can actually see it in here. We have connected our phytosanitary document to our consignment, and we can see in the consignment change set that now we have a second change set because we updated the data. We added the phytosanitary certificate, and of course we are going to have an immutable proof for this one as well on the ledger. Okay, let's give it a few seconds until it's verified. Taking a few seconds. This is just a test environment, so that's why it's taking a little bit longer. Okay, now we are verified and we can go and see the proof on the blockchain. So yeah, this is a basic flow, a little demonstration that you can see. You guys see how you can use this, and yeah, I'm gonna pass it back to Jose.
Yeah, thank you, Cornel. So here we've seen different capabilities. So we have seen the auditable item graph capabilities, where you can create nodes of the graph, and then here we will have two nodes, one consignment and one document associated to the consignment. We can link those nodes, so we are creating the graph, and both of them are audited. Yeah? And even one of them could even be transferred as it is an NFT in the ledger. And you can see that we can use with flexibility JSON LD representations with UNC fact vocabularies, other vocabularies. So it shows the capability in a sandbox of what a single node, can do. And in future webinars, you will see this demonstration, but in with other components as well, and a multiple node setup. We will also show, for instance, also how we could automatically extract data from one of these documents that still are, PDFs, etc., etc. So I think I'm going to just 5 minutes to show a roadmap, and then a little bit of our roadmap. This course is an estimation. So, and then we will start with the questions, which is quite important for us to gather feedback. So for the roadmap, essentially, we have plans for next 2 years, at least develop the plans. Of course, we don't have only plans for 2 years. It will be for more years. But where we are now is that we are in the end of Q1, and you will see that there is the workbench available. We have this webinar. We have shared with you the white paper. And there is updated the twindev.org site, where the different packages, documentation is there. We invite you to visit it. And then Q2 is going to be very intense, because we are going to refine the components you've seen, but also we are implementing the ODRL component, which means the policy management. And our colleagues are also working hard in how do you facilitate onboarding of participants in ecosystems through TwinID, and looking also alignment with for instance, initiatives like Life and BLI. And Q3, well, we are developing the catalog at the moment, and a decentralized version of the catalog. I've seen a question about the catalog. We will respond about it. In Q3, Q4 will be the quarters with the decentralization will start happening with the data space connector and catalog and other auxiliary components there. So Q4 is where you will start seeing, multiple nodes in our demonstrations. But overall, we plan to have a webinar every quarter, so you will see the progress and your understanding of the different APIs, different capabilities across the quarters. And in 2026, well, we plan to start with the application of Twin to digital product passport ecosystems as well, but also staying, sharp in the evolution of standards, particularly in identity. They are moving targets. There is the upcoming GNAP standard, BC APIs from W3C, and also initiatives like the EI-2 are moving targets, so we would like to stay sharp there. But also it's going to be quite important, you know, twin adapters and blueprints for this, for certain applications like Ashikuda, eFITO, other ERPs like SAP is going to be important to provide adapters. It's going to be one of the key elements. And yeah, so it's building and building more on top of this during this year and next year. So this is pretty much the summary. Of course, the roadmap is dynamic, but there is an ambitious, I would say, initiative here. And there is also a key point that the standards we are basing on, they are also evolving, moving targets. Gaia X is releasing new specifications. As I said, W3C standards are also appearing and identity standards are appearing. So it's a moving target, and it is also in the digital product passports, the standards from GS1 and from Senelec are also coming around. So it will be also a work of aligning there and looking for alignment. It will be also a challenge here. Nothing more. And now we can go back to you, to the questions, which is quite important.
Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you so much, Cornel. Quite an impressive task that you brought us to this stage. So I just want to recognize you and the whole team, some of you here. So very, very impressive. Thanks so much. I just want, first of all, to say that I do expect, right, that we will share the presentation afterwards with the participants today. So you will have a chance also on the roadmap to, it just can be hard to read on a share screen, right? So you have a chance to look at it. I do also think that the roadmap is a moving target depending on other things coming in. But just want to say that we will share this with you. We are working, and I want to frame that again. We will slowly go more and more public and allow more and more to provide input to this, but we have to balance that we can actually also put resources on development at the same time with the team and so on. So we want to balance this. So we want to thank again you as friends to join us today and ask questions for us. So let's go into questions. And I think you saw already the first one, Jose, and I will just, we got a question from Jarek about the catalogs. And I think the question was whether they were centralized or they were local with the different participants. And it's probably relates to the question about how do you search for things in a decentralized environment? But maybe you would give 2 words on that, Jose.
Yeah, so the catalog, the current design is ready to, that each twin node, they may have their own copy of the catalog, you know, so a catalog is replicated, and there could be even nodes, you know, that they have like primary catalogs, and where actually they are receiving new participant, new service registration, and then that is propagated through the proper mechanisms to the different copies of the catalog.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but the question is also about, let's say, are those rules? Because as I understand, the role of the catalog is to set up the rules more or less for the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the Gaia X architecture, it is being talked about registry and catalog. So the registry is like the one that has the rules, and the catalog is the one that has the participant registration.
Okay.
And the service registration. Of course, they are quite in philosophy. In the end, it's like a registry where you can find different entries, but they separate at least conceptually those two.
Okay, here, yes, because let's say that the reason behind those questions is that because the solutions I see is quite generic, yes, and can support multiple use cases and so on, and can track the documents. However, my question is how to narrow it to particular, for example, use case, like for example, customs. And where to set the rules for the ecosystem participants and so on.
Yeah. That's a good point, because in the end, you would need in your node to have reference to the rules your node is abiding to, and what are those rules in which registry they are. So because your node is going to participate in a particular ecosystem, and it will abide to the rules of that ecosystem that will be found in a registry, etc. So that's one interesting point. The other question is whether one node could participate in multiple ecosystems with different rules. So that's another point that we have not dig into, but a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to take a questions that was in the comments first. Geronimo, you asked about who is involved at this stage, and maybe I'll just frame it quickly, so we can go also to more questions. But basically, there are different ecosystems that are working and working with us on deploying at the moment. We have an ecosystem in Kenya where it's really with the government we are working on, where we set up nodes with their single window system in Kenya. And traders are using this to draw all their relevant export documents. And we have an ecosystem working in UK where it's really freight forwarders that are involved with us, but also port operators, port health, and cabinet office. So we're working there with a mix of, and it's always ecosystems, right? Because you want to share data. So here it's really an ecosystem that is more industry led, but the government is involved, and you'll find in UK right now there's a lot of articles out on the failed single window system for UK and so on. So it's interesting to see if such a process this might be an alternative route. So there are different ecosystems, and one of them we also work with is Result, which is based in Holland, and it's with the Port of Rotterdam and fresh produce actors in Holland, and Alosha is leading that. And you had your hands up, so this was my segue to you, Alosha.
Yeah, no, my question was basically this. I had a question about how the business who provided the business requirements for the roadmap, but I think you answered that one already quite elaborate. Yeah, no, the Result project is a project from the Dutch Institute of Advanced Logistics, in which we collaborate with Institute of Export and IOTA, but also with parties in the Netherlands, the Fresh Produce House, Port of Rotterdam, DocLab, clients from the fresh produce industry on two particular trade lanes, one between between Kenya and the Netherlands, and the other one between Netherlands and the UK. Basically, what we have established is a working end-to-end infrastructure between these countries, allowing for basically tracking goods from the moment they are exporting in Kenya to delivery to the end client in the Netherlands, and same story, but export of fresh produce out of the Netherlands to the end client in the UK.
Yeah, thanks, Alosha, and there will be much more on this. And And you are right in maybe we need to also in these presentations here have a little bit on the roadmap from a, let's call it a user point of view, business point of view. We've been focusing very much today on the technical. Christoph, please, you had your hands raised.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Excellent presentation, Jose and his colleague, who the name unfortunately I forgot. Really great. Also the kind of frame you were able to cover. I have the two remarks to earlier questions. The difference between the GAIX registry and GAIX catalogs is a fundamental one. You can, because the GAIX registry, you need to have a shared state. Of course, that's looking for a distributed ledger. You need to have a shared state on which the trust can operate between all participants. This is typically a registry, and what you store there is the ontologies, the shape of the ontologies, the trust anchors, something like that. What you also could store there as a trust service provider is trusted catalog providers or other trusted service providers, but those would go conceptually at the root level, and the catalog is at the higher level where you can store anything. So you need, if you look at verifiable credential and the three-party trust model, issuer, holder, and verifier, that needs a common source of trust for the ontology, how you specify the credentials. So that's the fundamental. There was a second question about what about ecosystems with their different rules. First, they would potentially have different GAIX registries or registry at all. And what we are at GAIX, you know that I'm the CTO of GAIX, we are working on a modularization concept. We have developed one rule book for a certain type of ecosystems, but that's totally unrelated to other ecosystems and won't work in 99%. What we are working is on providing an extension mechanism that any ecosystem, any trade corridor can specify there, and that would be in a conceptual model first, their rules, the rule book, which would be a business rule book, like a PDF document with the criteria. And then we are specifying the way how to implement, how to specify that in an ontology. So how the claims, potentially also ODRL rules. So we are working on that. That should be available and specified and implemented at the summit in November, because then any ecosystem, you would go to your lawyers, write down the criteria in a PDF file, and then somehow, if they can use ODRL, you can then link that to compliance engine, etc. But then you can automate the compliance checking, and that would be the twin clearinghouses who would do the compliance checking, and you can use smart contracts however you implement the clearinghouses. So that's that. And I've actually, the only question is, which I didn't find also in the reference architecture, what did you use any source code for a database connector, or did you develop your connector completely on your own? I think
that's a good question. So we have from previous from the TLIP in Kenya, we have a data space connector prototype.
So you were using that one, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and the idea behind that, if you read the white paper, is what we plan to do is having like two different interfaces. So because in the end the IDSA protocol is just, the interesting thing is how they in the end negotiate the two parties. That's,
yes.
But then how do you transfer the data is up to.
That's the transfer protocols you can define individually, yeah, with findings, yeah.
Exactly. So we are working on the latter now,
okay.
And providing these activity streams. So the data is supplied through activity streams that you are saying, okay, this has happened. I propagate the activity to other data space connector, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but okay, so you focus on the data on the data plane implementation. Okay.
Yeah, the data plane implementation. Yeah. And also the other aspect is that you can query. You have a generic way of querying about an item. So please give me the item that meets this. So a simple query, and a simple way of transfer whatever object you want through an activity stream. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, you wrote it on page 42 that you were using DSP in any case. Yeah, I missed that. Yeah, so I was wondering on the software. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And of course, the use of OpenID for VC will make you eIDAS 2 compliant. The verified credentials. So you are definitely more advanced than some other projects for use. Absolutely. Yeah. We totally subscribe to that. Yeah. And also VC. Yeah, so.
Thanks, Christoph, and it's great to have your input here and cross-fertilize with you. I really, really appreciate that a lot. Jakob.
You can only support that, yeah. Win.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, Jakob. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you all, yes. So let me just lower the hand, otherwise it will remain. So I have a comment and a question. I will admit I was not able to join this for the entire duration, so I might have missed something, but my impression is that what was demonstrated was very technical, very focused at developers. Whereas if you would like this to be easily also understood by people who are in logistics and their primary work is logistics, like I am, you probably need to tailor the demonstrations and also the words used in the user interface of the demonstrations in such a way that it speaks to us as end users. That's more of a comment than anything else. But I do have a question as well. You mentioned EPCIS as the event information exchange mechanism. Now, events can occur against any kind of object, documents, or even entities like consignments. But looking at this particular roadmap, the 2 slides, I actually don't see any references to development of the mechanisms, ontologies, protocols related to capturing events and sharing events and linking events to the objects, like a consignment. So that seems to me a little bit strange. Also, because in UNC-FACT I've worked a lot on attestations and the information exchanges around. And one of the key things that was very much front and center is the revocation of attestations, which is an event and a status associated with an event. So I will admit I was out of the conversation for 20 minutes. If it was addressed, I apologize, but I just ask myself, where would that fit in your roadmap?
No. Well, if you check our presentation, there is an event management. There is an event management component that you see here. So there is the event management component with the event repository and storing the data in these auditable item streams that are actually associated then with the different items, so consignments, whatever. So there is actually an event management, and it's something we are in the existing projects like TLIP is being used. I don't know if there is a specific entry because in the roadmap here among the different components, but it includes, it is for sure included, you know, and I'm working on that. So, and it's not only, as you say, EPCIS. EPCIS has particular use cases, but there are other events that are not EPCIS, but also need to be captured. For instance, in the multimodal transport data model of UNC-FACT, there are transportation events, etc., that we need to model. So EPCIS is like the baseline, but in the end, I agree with you that not EPCIS is for certain use cases, and there will be other use cases. So that's why it is said EPCIS++, because there are other things apart from EPCIS, but it is in our technical roadmap, the event management, which is based on a component which is the auditable item streams, where there you start capturing the different sequences of events, etc., etc.
So
So
maybe I should have also addressed it at Alyosha, because these goods that are coming from Kenya to the Netherlands, apparently you are in let's call it a pilot implementation or a demonstrator. I don't know the scope of that, but one would wonder if there is not at least some level of track and trace of those goods from probably the field all the way through the transport and logistics chain, and then into some shop or some shops, plural, in the Netherlands. So I just don't know whether that is part of the demonstrator, but it would be a logical thing to expect, if it's not yet part of the demonstrator, that it would be added to the demonstrator. So that's more directed at Alyosha than anybody else here.
Yeah, to answer that question, Jacco, for the Netherlands, UK, we provide end-to-end visibility, really also on a track and trace level of not only a truck, but also the consignments that are in the truck, including digital CMR signing, both at pickup and delivery. So that's and fully automated customs clearance within that. Between the Netherlands and Kenya, we don't have that overarching layer yet. Right now, we focus on the focus has been on automating the custom process on imports into the Netherlands. But you can imagine with all the information being captured in Twin, with information that we capture throughout the vessel journey, arrival at the port, the customs clearance, and the final delivery, that building something on top of that would be a option. However, at this point, we are mainly looking at improving data quality between business to business for business to business purposes, in order to also increase the quality of government to government data transfer. So that is really the first use case that we have identified that we want to approach, also given that on the 1st of July this year, the rules in the UK will become more stringent when it comes to gets to certain fresh produce that are qualified as medium risk are then also being subjected to all kinds of tests, and nobody knows whether they got their data in order for that. So that was really identified as a first step. But you're absolutely right. I think the overarching layer could definitely be useful also for on the Kenya-Netherlands trade lane. Yeah.
no, yeah, thanks so much. I have the unpleasant role of timekeeping, but I actually think it's a very interesting discussion. And I think what comes out of what you also said, Jacco, is that we should also aim not only for technical presentations, but also take some use case presentations where we discuss them through, and people, we can discuss how that links back to the technology, but also why the use cases are relevant. So thanks so much for Jan Torpeders, and I also saw you had a question. So before we close off, I also want to make sure that you get a chance to ask your question. Are you still with us, Jan? Or you muted, maybe?
Now I am.
Yeah.
Now you can hear me, I guess.
Yes.
I came into this through the mission project. Actually, there are two EU projects working in parallel, Dynaport and Mission. And the question is, how do you intend to use this approach in the Mission project? Number two, trade lanes has been used as a term in which this is supposed to work. I have been for some time involved in the development of what people call the physical internet, which is much more dynamic than the traditional trade lane thinking or the traditional logistic chain thinking or supply chain thinking. How does this fit into the philosophy of the physical internet, which is highly dynamic logistics?
Maybe I can cover the first one. I don't know, Jose, if you have anything you can add on the physical internet, if you know that philosophy. But maybe let me just, on Mission Project, we were invited in by DFDS. And we have a quite a small role in the Mission Project, to be honest. But what they wanted us to do is around of the port optimization, if we could look into what the document flow also means for port optimization. So we will work with the FDS in Trieste port under the Mission Project to see how that links in. I know it's a little bit of I think a little bit not directly into the big Mission Project, but it's a smaller role in that where we can integrate with port operators and potentially border agencies. So I hope
that's fine. Thanks.
On the physical internet, I don't know usually around that. Jose, do you have anything?
I am not. If you have further information about that, would be great. We can.
Okay, so let's then set up a separate discussion on that one then. Yes.
Exactly. And there is going to be a mission meeting soon, so maybe over there we can discuss as well.
That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a quick, then I'm not sure, but there is a meeting going on for what they call the Port Call Optimization Network in Valencia. I think end of May, 26 or thereabout.
Yes.
It may be interesting if you guys will be there as well. I think.
Yes, we will be there. We'll be there.
Yes.
You will be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate that you took the time today and shared questions and spent your mental capacity with us in this exciting journey. We will do more, as said, and we will also look into how we can do more around actually talk about the use